Okay, yeah, I'm ready.
2, 3, 2, 1, and we're live. Bismillah.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to our dearest National Zakat Foundation audience, and welcome to what will be, inshallah, my final session for this month of Ramadan. My name is Calisha Bennett, and inshallah tonight I'll be hosting a panel discussion with some beautiful sisters from the community, and we will be looking at the topic of the journey towards getting closer to Allah and surviving different tests in life. How we're going to discover how some of our sisters have faced head on and managed to overcome their test through their connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and get some insights and advices, and just really personally touch base with the journey that they've been on. And I think this is, I just really wanted to acknowledge the courage that it takes for people to share their stories, to publicly, speak some of their deepest pains. And it's not something that everyone jumps or puts their hand up to. And I really wanted to honor our dear sisters today who will be on our panel in what they've decided to share. And we're going to have a really deep discussion. And something to keep in mind is that when we're having these deep discussions, like, it's a sacred space, subhanAllah, like we are sharing parts of who we are. We're sharing our wounds, we're sharing our thoughts, reflections, with the hope, inshallah, that the stories and the insights might benefit somebody out there who's listening and watching right now, and perhaps they will be able to get through their tests a tiny bit easier at the least, because of the advices and the insights that they gain from our dear sisters. So I'd like to welcome everyone who's tuning in on Facebook Live, as well as those who are joining us right here in Zoom. Don't be shy to interact with us in terms of writing in the comments and asking questions. If we see them popping up during our panel discussion tonight, I will bounce over to them later towards the end of the session, because we'd love to entertain some questions that you guys might have. And be sure as well to reach out to our dear sisters. You should be able to find them maybe on socials, or even just get in contact with myself, and we can connect you with them if you want a little bit more deeper advice or support. I'm sure they'd be more than happy to assist. So I'd like to welcome my sister Heba Shahid, also known as the pelvic expert. MashaAllah, she's probably like, I'm so tired of being referred to as both. But tonight we're just talking to Sister Heba Shahid, our sister in Islam, and we're going to keep the profession aside tonight, right? Let's go deep and dive deep with Sister Heba, who's been sharing some really amazing content online, to be honest. Yeah, subhanAllah, her and I have somehow connected. We haven't had a lot of in-person time with each other, but there's something there, one of those like kindred soul connections, alhamdulillah. And we have my beautiful sister Aisha. How do I say your surname? Is it Dahoud? Am I saying it right?
Dahoud, yeah.
Okay, Dahoud. Aisha Dahoud, who's another beautiful sister I've managed to meet in my homeschooling journeys. And she has a beautiful story, beautiful family as well. So welcome, ladies. It's beautiful to have you here.
Assalamu alaikum. Thanks so much for having us.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Yeah, feel free to like talk over each other. We'll just, whoever's voice is the loudest is who the mic will go to. So so welcome, guys, and thank you so much for joining us for this panel conversation. And we're going to get straight into it, inshallah, with just getting to know a little bit about each of you. Heba, we'll start with you. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, inshallah.
Okay, so I'm Heba, and as you mentioned, my background is I am a pelvic physio by profession. But I guess before that, I'm a Muslim woman, and I have also, as you mentioned, been through quite a lot of hardships in my life, and yeah, it's kind of made me who I am. And I guess even the journey into the type of work that I do has been as a product of all of the challenges that I've been through in my life. And I'm a mum, so I have one daughter. She's 3 years old, and being a mum to her was also one of those massive challenges that Allah gave me, and having to mother her with everything that's going on with her has been, alhamdulillah, something that has really kind of it's really helped me develop personally and spiritually as well. So, I mean, I don't know what else you want to know. Like, that's kind of me in a nutshell. I'm a positive person. I like people, even though I'm an introvert. But yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thanks, Heba. How about you, Aisha?
Following Heba's lead, because I've never done one of these intros, but my name's Aisha Dahoud. A lot of people know me as Q Aisha, like on the online world. I am a homeschooling mom of 3 kids. I'm a single parent. And I feel like over the years, so I'm 31, I think. So in these years, I feel like I've matured and grown through a lot of trials that have been placed, on me. And I feel like even though there were trials and hardships, they all brought a bit of change to who I am right now. And I really am grateful for all the trials, because it's just shaped me to who I am, and I'm just continuously growing and meeting amazing women like both of you. I think that's just I don't know what else to say on top of that.
Yeah, awesome. So I think you guys, well done. You've just overcome the hardest part, which is actually introducing yourself. That's something a lot of people find difficult. I also find it difficult. You don't know where to start, because it's like, how do you define yourself in a couple of sentences? Human beings are a lot more complex than that, especially women. Alhamdulillah, we've got a lot of layers and a lot of facets to who we are. So, we're going to go into one of the standout tests that you guys have experienced and do a bit of a deep dive with those. But just talking to our audience who's tuning in tonight, I just wanted to, take a moment and just put into perspective. Like, I think, I can sense that what we're going to see as we hear our dear sisters' journeys is, the importance and the power of the mindset and the way that you perceive and the perspective that you carry with the tests that come your way. We're going to, inshallah, discover important traits and qualities like resilience, and not just psychological, emotional resilience, but spiritual resilience as well, which is something very important for us as Muslims. And with us entering into the blessed, last few nights of Ramadan, and tonight really special. I'm pretty sure the online world is just pumping tonight with 27th night activities. And here we're talking about hardships, but I think it's a really important topic to be even addressing on this night, as we spend the night turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in dua, and the burdens and the weight and the grief that some people might be carrying, the worries that some people might be carrying. It's a beautiful time to pour that out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for anyone who's listening in tonight, maybe something will resonate with you. Perhaps you'll hear something which will inspire you, something that will give you that little bit more courage or that little bit more stamina to get through the tests that you're going through. Just know that you aren't alone, and everybody's going through some kind of test, and it's about the meaning that we create through that test. And in life, the tests will either make you or break you, but you get to be in the driver's seat of deciding whether that test makes you or breaks you. So inshallah, with that, let's get started. Who would like to go first? So who's ready to share their journey, do a deep dive, inshallah, about the biggest test or one of the standout tests that you've experienced in your life, and tell us about it, inshallah.
I'll nominate
me, pick me.
Yeah.
I knew you were going to nominate me.
Heba, you look like a little meerkat, like your shoulders were just ready to go.
No, I'm like, oh my God, I hope they're not going to pick me.
You knew this was coming.
It's funny because Calisha sent me the message a few days ago, and I was like, yeah, I'll talk about whatever. And then today she sent me the questions, and I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to talk about? And then my heart started racing, and my stomach started getting butterflies in it. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to talk about? And because some people know a little bit about me, and some people know nothing about me, and a lot of people think they know me, right? But a lot of stuff I don't actually talk about. Like, I don't talk about a lot of the hardships in my life, or I kind of make maybe just like a hint of it, and people kind of assume that they know. But the thing about having gone through a lot of the hardships that I've gone through is a lot of unspeakable things happen. And because these unspeakable things happen, we're often forced to keep silent. And one of the things that I would always say is I feel like I've walked my whole life with a knife at my throat, right? Have not allowed to speak, not feeling comfortable or feeling safe to speak about the things that happened to me. And a lot of people don't realize that there are so many people in the community who are walking around, in a chokehold, not speaking about these things that have happened to them. And a lot of it is because there's so many taboos around a lot of the issues that occur in our community. So we're aware a little bit of domestic violence. And I guess NZF is a great platform of bringing awareness about, single moms, mothers in need, women who've been in violent relationships or in abusive relationships. But one of the things that we don't talk about is children who are in abusive relationships, children who are victims of family violence, right? And that's something that I felt like I need to speak about today. So I haven't really opened up about this publicly before. There was only one time where I did do a talk about being an adult survivor of narcissistic abuse, and it was a very emotional topic for me. And even now, when I'm speaking, I can hear my heart pounding in my chest. I can feel my voice elevating. I can feel like all these visceral reactions occurring, because for so long I was, I've been walking around in a chokehold, and sometimes I even feel like a physical sensation of tightness in my throat about talking about this topic. And people, people look at you. You go to school, you're out in community, you go to work, and all this sort of stuff, and nobody realizes that what you've been through, right? And sometimes you have a certain reaction to something that occurs, like maybe you get triggered by the way somebody says something, or if somebody slightly gaslights you, or says something that kind of reminds you of something that happened to you when you were a kid, and you can feel yourself becoming triggered. And sometimes you act in a way that isn't your true nature, right? Because you're actually acting in a way that is a product of your abuse, right? And so sometimes people can perceive you in a certain way that is, some people can perceive you in a certain way that, perceive in a certain way that's actually not your true nature. And that even then kind of affects you. So I guess what I wanted to talk about is and bring to light is that, there are a lot of people in our community, a lot of children and adults who are survivors of child abuse. And one of the things I guess that really stood out for me is that, we're in this isolation time, right? Social isolation. And one of the things that hit me when it first went through, and it really was like a weight and a burden on my heart and my soul, was like all these children who used to go to school and feel safe at school because they felt unsafe at home. Because I was one of those kids. I loved going to school because it was a way for me to escape from home. I would stay out after school. I would go to my friend's house and not come home till late so that I wouldn't have to go home. And the reason for that is I don't need to go into exactly what happened, but essentially there was a lot of child abuse, a lot of verbal abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, physical abuse. And it really, it does something to you. As a child, children are brought into this world. We're supposed to have that attachment, right, to our primary caregiver, our nurturing parent, right? You're supposed to have this feeling of being loved unconditionally, feel connection and feel safety, right? And children who don't get that from birth, right, and then their entire lives that they live in the home, because as Muslims we're not allowed to leave home. I tried to leave home so many times. I tried to run away from home. I tried to go and get my own place, and I wasn't allowed. I was dragged back, so it was like you kind of you feel unsafe, right? And nobody really knew that. No one at school knew that, right? Nobody at school knew. Nobody at uni knew. People in the community, I was quite involved in the community doing volunteering and stuff. Like nobody knew, because you put a smile on your face and you're so helpful and all this sort of stuff, and you just kind of just get by. And I think that's the other thing is that I guess the hardest thing for me. So a lot of people think that the abuse that happens to you is tough, and it is definitely. But for me, one of the hardest things, because I'm a person who cannot watch those types of things happening, for me, it was actually more abusive and more painful to watch my own siblings suffer, right? So like for me to suffer, so I would actually go and put myself in harm's way so that I could protect my siblings. And whether they saw that or not, my siblings, and whether they appreciated that or not, doesn't really matter, right? Because for me, it was like much harder to watch them suffer than for me to suffer. So I'd be like, I'd take it all, or I'd like fight back, and I'd be the only one who fought back, right? And I was labeled the difficult child and the black sheep of the family.
Troublemaker. Yeah, because you're
the troublemaker, the all of these negative things, the deviant, the this, the that, because I was always very different. And the other thing that I didn't mention was spiritual abuse, right? That's huge. Like you think that people see the certain families in the community and they think they're all religious and all that stuff, but they don't know what happens behind closed doors, right? And how they treat their children, right? And the thing is, right, like they and it's interesting because the topic is about losing your Iman or whatever it was, right? Like, finding hardship. And to be honest, I kind of do resonate with that, because growing up, I actually became very averse to religion, right? Even though I was wearing a headscarf and praying and whatever, I was very averse to religion, dogmatic religion. I've always been a spiritual person. Ever since I was little, I've always been spiritual. I've always felt connected to God. I've always felt connected to Islam. I can always feel God watching me. Like I was always one of those kids that was always super connected to God, but to Allah. But religion, like dogmatic religion, and I was very averse to it, because I would see these primary caregiver, praying, for example, and then straight after prayer would go on a rampage and bash up one of my siblings or something like that. You know what I mean? So it was like a lot of associations that would occur that I would actually push back from religion. And it's not that you're losing your Iman, it's that you feel like this, you kind of develop a negative thing. And it's a cognitive distortion that occurs, right? Because your brain, like you're still a developing brain as a child, your brain is still developing, and this all happens, right? So your brain is tying religion with abuse, and even till today, I struggle. Like I feel like I'm a very spiritual person. Like I'm very connected to Allah. I'm very spiritual, and today I feel more spiritual than I've ever been in my life. But I really struggle, and I'm not afraid to say it, that I really struggle with reading Quran. Even though I know that I'm really good at reading Quran and whatever, but as soon as I start and I hear myself reciting, I hear the person who abused me reciting, and it like I feel this disgust, right? And even praying, like just like it's like your brain, it's really difficult. And I think this is something
it's been hardwired to relate the religious spiritual acts, the rituals, to the person who perpetrated
trauma. That's right.
Yeah, they're triggers.
Yeah.
That's right. And it's so difficult because, this is like a daily struggle. Every single day I have to tell myself, when I do religious obligatory act, get that out of my head, come back, it's about me and Allah. Come back, it's about me and Allah. This is self-preservation. This is self-preservation. This is self-preservation. It's like you constantly have to tell, it's like before you said, we can be a victim, or we have a choice. We have a choice to let the things that happen to us make us better people. And that's what I try to do. I try to be good to everyone, right? And if somebody's not good to me, I have to keep telling myself that people are only going to be as good as themselves, right? They're only going to be as good as themselves, and whatever they treat you is a reflection of themselves, not of you. That you continue to be good and you check back in with your heart and your conscience. You know that you're a good person. You know that you have good intentions. If someone's going to treat you poorly, it's just a reflection of them. There's like these things that you constantly have to keep telling yourself, and it's a choice, right? Like I could choose to be a victim, or I could choose to kind of, the things that happen to me happen. Now, how am I going to because I know that if I hadn't gone through what I had, I wouldn't be who I am today. I know that I'm in a much better place, but even in my profession, the people that I help, because most of the people that I help are trauma cases, childhood abuse, domestic violence, sexual trauma, all that sort of stuff. So I feel like, if I hadn't gone through that, I would never have had that
power.
You wouldn't have that empathy, that compassion, that, because you've actually walked in their shoes for years and years and years, so you can actually relate to them. And I even say it's almost like I merge with my clients and like help them unpack their own traumas. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because there's one other thing that I want to say before we move on to Aisha is the victim mentality. Okay, So it comes back to what you're saying, Calisha, before about making a choice, right? Making a choice to be a victim or making a choice not to be. Now, one of the things that I want to point out is that the victim mentality is a spectrum, okay? And so we have the victim. So in the victim mentality, we have one end, which is the victim, the person that's like, feel sorry for me. I'm always complaining about my abuse. My mom did this to me. My brother did that to me. Blah 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 blah. I'm always wow. My life is my life is just my life sucks. And what's the point of going on and whatever, right? So you have that, which I've been into. And the thing is, it's not like if you're there, it's like the worst thing in the world. It's just you just have to be conscious that you're there. You just have to be conscious that you're there, because being conscious, being aware, and knowing that you are in a victim mentality, just that consciousness is going to help you step out of it. Like you'll be like, I'm not just sleepwalking through my life being a victim to what happened to me, being a victim to the circumstances.
Now I'm power when you're the victim.
I'm conscious now that I was a victim. But then there's the other spectrum, the other end of the spectrum of the victim mentality, and this is where I spent 99% of my life. Is the opposite end of the victim mentality is the savior mentality. Okay, you're still in victim mentality. It's a spectrum, but there's a savior complex. I need to save my brother. I need to save my sister. I need to save my patient. I need to save my friend. It's like, and that's what I find. It's like you're in it, because the victim mentality, it's a spectrum, and it's also a codependency relationship. Okay, because that's what you have to recognize and be conscious of, is that if you are on this spectrum, you are codependent. And I know that I have been codependent my entire life. Like 32 years of my life, I have been codependent. And it only realized like literally a few months ago, oh my God, I have been living my entire life in a codependency relationship, but not as a victim, as the savior. Always trying to save everyone, coming to their rescue. And even in my relationship with my patients, I'm like, if my patients don't get better, I get sick. I'm like, oh my God, they're not getting better. Like, what am I doing wrong? Why isn't this working? Like, you start to put it all on yourself. Like, you need to save everybody. You need to save your siblings. You need to save your other family members, your friends, blah, blah, blah. So just being conscious, just recognizing that there is a victim mentality spectrum. And the thing is, both of them can become tyrants, okay? So the victim can become a tyrant in that, if the savior doesn't come to their rescue, the victim's like, why didn't you help me? I needed your help. And why didn't you come and save me? And blah, blah, blah. And then the savior becomes the tyrant, when it's like, why do you always need my help? Why can't you just do anything for yourself? And I would fall into that. I would be like doing that with some of my siblings. I'm like, I can't save you all the time. Like, I need to have a life too. Like, you know what I mean? So like, when you realize that I'm on that victim mentality spectrum, you can start to change. You can be like, okay, step back. What am I doing? No, I can't save her. She needs to have it within herself. He needs to have it within himself to step out of that role, right? And always trying to understand my abusers. Why did they do that to me? Why did they do that to me? Why did that keeps you in that victim mentality? Who cares? They're never going to change. They have their own traumas. They've got their own issues that they have to deal with.
You'll never find that answer. And there's no justification for the wrong or the oppression that people do. There's no justification. Sometimes it's just, it is what it is, unfortunately, the trauma that was perpetrated.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of my little story to begin with. Now we can go to Aisha.
No, off what you said, when we try to sit down, and I feel like it's a waste of time trying to understand other people's abuse, it's just a waste of time. It's like trying to talk to a brick wall. You're not going to get any responses. You're not going to get anywhere, because when people inflict abuse on you, it's something within themselves. It's something deep down within themselves that they need to figure out, and no one can force them to get that epiphany of like, okay, I'm doing this harm. That can be generational even, and I'm putting people in toxic situations, and I'm harming children, or my spouse, or my parents, or my siblings, whoever the victims turn out to be. So that whole victimhood, I completely relate to you, Heba, because you do have the choice, and it may sound insensitive to someone who does really genuinely feel like a victim, and may feel it may sound insensitive to hear that we are saying it's a choice, but when you remove yourself from, you know, still remaining in that victimhood, when you're hearing this from other women or other people that have been through their own trials, you do need to take yourself out of your own shell and look at yourself from the outside in, and kind of tell yourself, even if you don't believe it, tell yourself you do have a choice, and kind of feel how empowering that is, because it really is. Because when you're a victim, a lot of the time victims have control over them, and they're actually stripped of their choices and stripped of their freedoms. And it's easy to fall into that, you know, into that kind of that hole, and you feel like you're stuck and you may as well remain there. But that's not the end. We're still breathing, we're still living, the sun is still rising and setting, like we still have more chances to do better. And I feel like it's when your perspective is different and it's not what people put on you. So I've been through you know, a quite eventful decade of a marriage that failed, and I left that situation with my 3 children, and it was a very, very hard decision to make, and it was a long process to kind of take the plunge, do it, and kind of stick to my decision. And even though you have the community, your friends and family judging you, even positively or negatively, it's something that you have to be comfortable within yourself, that you're making this decision and that you're going to take control, and you're not going to be a victim anymore, and you're going to go forward, preserving everyone's rights along the way. You know, we don't want to drag anyone through the mud, giving everyone their rights, but doing what is correct and doing what you believe is the best thing to do, that needs to be done for yourself and those dependent on you. So for me, I had to make the decision for myself, for my mental health, my physical health, to end a very long marriage, and to kind of break the family unit and take my 3 children with me. And a lot of my decisions came because I was thinking about my children, and cutting toxic cycles, and giving them a different type of future of what I kind of saw in other women that decided to stay in those types of marriage. And it's sad to see that, but also I feel blessed to be able to have that perspective of like almost seeing into the future through someone else's life, and seeing what happened to that woman spiritually, physically, mentally, financially, everything. And it's nothing pretty, you know. And with me, when I took that plunge and I moved out with the kids and I started this new chapter in my life, it was difficult, but it was much easier than my situation before. And then I had, alhamdulillah, the trial of, you know, seeing my son go through diagnosis. He was diagnosed with cancer, 6-month trial, you know, at our door. And doing that as a single parent, not being amicable with the co-parent, having everything, I had to kind of pick up the slack and everything. I had to make all the decisions and put in all the hard work and juggle everyone's emotions and our new look on life and what it's going to look like in the short term and the long term. Was very trying, but again, I refused to be in that victim mentality because I was trapped in it in the marriage for a long time and it tasted bitter. So instead of feeling the mold of what society expected me to react, so society expected me to break down, to ask for help, to maybe, you know, God forbid, go back to the marriage, to do a whole host of things. But alhamdulillah, I have been blessed to have amazing support and to have the perspective that has kind of helped me through it all and helped me kind of break it down and take it one day at a time. And just every time there's a little trial within that large trial, it was just kind of handled one thing at a time, as opposed to it being looked at as like this huge, massive mountain to climb. So yeah, that's going off the whole victim mentalityhood that Heba was talking about. And it is so on point, and I connect with that 100%. And it was a complete mental shift for me, is your perspective and the way you look, you have your outlook on life and where you choose to take it.
Yes, subhanAllah, it's very, very powerful. And sometimes when people hear about the tests and calamities that others are going through, they look at it through the lens of, well, what you're doing is, it looks hard. Isn't it easier if you go back, or isn't it easier if you do what was comfortable? But sometimes there is no easy choice. Sometimes it's out of two very difficult choices, and you've got to weigh up the pros and cons as a conscious, accountable adult who is leading, especially when you've got children involved in the decisions that you make. You've got to make the tough decisions, and it's not always about picking the easier option. Sometimes the better option is actually the harder option, and it might be a long span of hardship, but that ultimately in the bigger picture, that when you're older and you look back, you say, Alhamdulillah, I made that decision.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. That, and that's the journey of life, making those tough decisions with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, like at the forefront of our minds, like what is the best path for me in these decisions that I'm going to make moving forward in my relationship with my Creator, because ultimately you're living with consciousness of accountability to Him for the choices that you make. And so long as you're doing that with that in the forefront of your mind, despite the judgment of what others might say about your decision, your heart's at peace because you turned to Allah, for that decision and navigating that decision. So looking back at the tests that you've both been through, Heba, through, the domestic abuse that you experienced, and even now as an adult, like so much of your journey, your story, your strengths now are actually based on the trauma that you went through, subhanAllah. It's mind-boggling, when you think that something so horrible that no child should have to experience and go through in their upbringing, in their family home, has now become and shaped a large part of your life and your pursuits and your mission and your talents and strengths, subhanAllah. But what was it that kept you going through some of those dark times, the dark days where you did kind of question the religious aspect because of the spiritual abuse, or questioning how much of Islam do I want to adopt now in my own personal life, in my adult life, in my journey of parenting? What was some of the things that got you through those dark times?
Yeah, I guess that consciousness of Allah for me was always, I always knew that the version of God that I had was benevolent, not malevolent, as I was taught. Because a lot of people would sympathize with me in that a lot of the time growing up, some parents and spiritual leaders and stuff kind of push the punishment aspect of Islam across. So it's like, if you do this, you're going to go to hell. If you don't respect this, then you're going to go to hell. And if you do this, you're going to hell. Like everything is pretty much you're going to hell. And because I was always innately intuitive and innately spiritual, it just never made sense to me that God would always, like the version of God that they pushed was this angry God that you had to be afraid of, And because I was always the type of person that sought knowledge, like if something didn't make sense to me, I would go and study and learn and research, and I would go to the library. Like, so back in the day when there wasn't any internet and all that, I would go to the library and open up encyclopedias and books and stuff like that to read to help me understand. And the version of God that always resonated with me was a benevolent God, a God that was merciful, a God that was, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Al-Ghafur, At-Tawwab, Al-Wadud, like all of the, like, yes, I know I did a lot of bad things when I was young, but I did them because I was rebelling against my family, or, but at the same time I knew that God would always forgive me. Like I always felt that in my heart, like, I think that's what it is. It's something to do with being connected to your spiritual self. Like a lot of the time when you have trauma, and this is actually a study of, this is a type of psychotherapy. It's called internal family systems. And internal family systems talks about how we all have a CEO our consciousness, which is your self with a capital S. So it's your spirit, it's your soul, right? So for us, it's the nafs, the spiritual ruh part of your nafs, right? And then when you have trauma, which many of us do have some degree of trauma throughout our lives, because trauma is what helps you grow. Like going through hard time is what helps you grow. You can either stay the same or you can grow from it, right? So we're meant to be challenged with things so that we can grow. And so internal family systems talks about how we then develop sub-personalities. Okay, so you have your soul and then you have sub-personalities where you have the exiles, which are all the parts of you that you had to exile. So for me, it was, you know, the happy-go-lucky kid, the one that loved to dance and sing and run around in circles, the one, and then the other parts, which were like my rage, like my anger, and then the emotional one, the one that, you know, would cry all the time, right? So those were all kind of the exiles. I had to exile them because they were not appreciated in that home, right? And then you develop protectors. So you develop managers, which are like your the protectors that kind of proactive, so they prevent you from your exiles ever, you know, coming to life. So they're kind of like, for me, it was perfectionism. Like, control my life. I'm going to just control everything. I'm just going to, like, you know, if I'm just perfect, if I just study a lot and I get good grades, then, you know, no one's going to pay attention to me, and I just do my thing and I'll avoid everything. And then you have your other protectors, which are your firefighters. And these are the ones that come up reactively. So when you're triggered, so if someone says to me, oh, you're a bad daughter or something, then my rage just comes out, my exile comes out. It's like, you know, and you kind of like, you see that part of you that isn't really your true self. It's like a sub-personality that's as a development of trauma. So for me, like, understanding this, like understanding that these are sub-personalities, but my true self can see them, and my true self can kind of bring them back. Like, I can turn off my protectors. I can reintegrate my exiles in a way. Like, the thing is, you kind of have to be conscious, right? Like, you kind of have to be conscious that there are these sides of yourself, and you shouldn't be afraid of those sides of yourself. It can be fearful to know, you know, that everybody has the capacity to do evil. Everybody has the capacity to be a narcissist. Everybody has the capacity to have rage. Everybody has the capacity to do, you know, horrific things. But we can get ourself, our spirit, our true self, which is innately compassionate and innately, you know, it's innately calm, and it's like the fitra, exactly.
True self. Yeah.
That's right. The fitra, the nafs al-mutma'inna, it's naturally there. We need to just empower that one and integrate all of these sides. So, like, getting to know yourself, getting to know yourself and your darkness. Yes, self-consciousness. Be conscious of yourself. So for me, it was like I was always conscious of Allah. So, you know, everyone will always say, oh, have taqwa, have God consciousness. In my house, taqwa meant fear Allah, be afraid, like fearing things. But in my mind, it was like, no, taqwa to me means to be conscious of Allah, that I know Allah is watching me. Even when I'm doing good, Allah is watching me. And even when I'm doing evil, Allah is watching me. And to feel then guilt and remorse for that. So, like, I felt like my self, capital S, so my fitra, my ruh, and my true self was always very strong. Like, even though all this stuff was happening to me, I always felt like this is wrong. This isn't what Allah would want. Like, just because this is a parent doesn't mean that they're right. Like, I always knew that, and I always fight back, you know. But like, no, what you're doing is wrong. You can't treat people like that. You can't talk like that. And because I was talking like this, it sounds like I'm angry. So I would always say things. They would always say things like, "Don't talk back to your parents. Don't raise your voice." Blah blah blah. But it's just passion. Like, I think there was a difference between justice and passion and anger. Like, to them, when I had justice and passion, it was anger and rage, right?
But
so,
you were fighting for justice, and you were fighting against injustice, but you were driven by your fitra, like your natural nature knew this is not right. And children do know what's right and wrong. And a lot of the time, you know, this is an important point for all of us parents to actually ask our kids. If you ask them, what am I doing wrong as a parent? They will tell you. Straight out, no filter, but you got to be ready to really listen and catch what they say and add that to your self-awareness basket. because kids will be brutally honest. And if we really want to assess ourselves as parents, you've got to be willing to listen to the kids say, you don't listen to me, or you say these, you know, negative put downs, or you make these sarcastic comments and they hurt my feelings. And sometimes we're so accustomed to those things because of how we grew up and the voices that we heard in our ears, which have now, you know, come out regurgitated onto our children. We've got to be able to really listen to the kids and let them guide us and lead us, because they are closer to their true, you know, their fitrah, their goodness, than we are. You know, we've become polluted by the adult world, our adult lives. We polluted ourselves, our environments have polluted us. When you ask a child, what am I doing wrong? Am I doing anything to oppress you? Do I hurt your feelings sometimes? They will tell you. And if we listen to them and take on board that wisdom, they will help you to mold and change yourself, subhanAllah. So Jazakallah khair, Heba, for giving us those points about touching base with your fitrah. I think, you know, connecting with your true self with that capital S is really important, because that is what will get you through those hard times, those dark days when the world feels so confusing and you're witnessing or experiencing injustice, especially, to just reconnect to your true self, connect that to Allah and do what's right and stay connected to Him as your, you know, your lifeline. How about you, Aisha? What did you do? How did you tackle your darkest days? How did you overcome those hard times and difficult points, low points?
I think for me, it was like similar to Heba, which is basically go to that quiet place and kind of reassess everything on like the base level. So like it's very hard to quieten the voices of others and society and the stereotypes that's put on you, and expectations that your loved ones, strangers, and even professionals put on you. I feel like this is like one of the main things that I learned going through, especially with my son, because I had a lot of people. Obviously, it was a shock because it's, you know, you always think it's another family that will get that news. It's never going to be you. That was certainly me. So I was very ignorant when it came to that. So it was that shock factor. But following that, obviously everyone was shocked. But the way people reacted was, and I know it all came from good intentions and them being supportive and that, but I felt like I was given a label to wear. And I've learned about myself is I don't like to be assigned labels. I like to kind of find my feet and just like, you know, be whatever feels correct and right and proper, and I'm not taking anyone's rights away or anything like that. But when someone assigns me a label, like saying, oh, you're this type of woman, or you're this type of mum, or you should be this type, or you should be reacting like this, I think I automatically rebel against that. And it's like, no, it doesn't sound right. Heba knows this.
I think we got something in common, eh?
Yeah. So
the rebel, man, the rebel.
Yeah, and I don't mean rebel in like such a, you know, we're breaking the rules or anyway, but I think especially as women, and then as Muslim women, and then also, you know, finding myself, you know, in the category of being like a single parent as well. You're given labels to kind of fulfill, and you're given a story to kind of live out. And I reject a narrative. That's right. Yeah. And
this is you now, and this is how the picture will be, and here's how the ending will be. Is that what it is for you? And you
and it's like, and I always have that puzzled look. Like I remember when I first got the diagnosis, I had a nurse, like within me hearing the diagnosis, I had a nurse within 10 minutes of me hearing it. So I had to pull myself together because I had to go back to my son. And my son was 9 years old when it happened. So you can't be upset in front of him. It'll make him upset. It was just going to be a disaster. He was already, you know, in the hospital setting, already stressed. So you didn't want to add to that. So anyway, so when I got the diagnosis, I had about a few minutes to react, and I kind of had to kind of just, you know, just pull myself together and return back to my son and being all like, yeah, everything's good, you know, we're just waiting and this and that, just playing it off. And I remember standing behind his bed because I felt myself, you know, well up with tears. And then I remember a nurse, like within 10 minutes of the diagnosis, put her arm around me and said, oh, sweetie, your whole life is going to change. It's going to be so hard. And then I was just like, I was in disbelief. Like she pulled me out of that, my sadness. And I was just like, are you serious? Are you, you know, the person who has contact with these parents who kind of, because we're in emergency. So, you know, I'm sure that they would get a lot of people who are diagnosed with different things. And I thought it was very insensitive. I was like, she just gave me a label to wear. She gave me this label of like, your life is going to be hard. It's going to go downhill. It's going to be so difficult, this and that. And I rejected. I was in disbelief. I was more disgusted with her behavior than anything. But I remember rejecting that. And that was the first time I rejected the label since my son's diagnosis. And then a lot of things with like, you know, social workers telling me, you know, it's okay to break down. You know, have you broken down? I'm like, no, I haven't broken down. I don't feel like I'm going to break down. Like, oh, it's healthy. Just let it out. So I got those messages lots. And I don't know, maybe if I didn't hear them, I would have broken down. I don't know. But having put that label on me, I feel like sometimes we have to kind of step away from what society wants you to be or expects you to be, especially as a woman, especially as a mother, because as a mother,
So
you're
the
like,
labels and the comments, sometimes people actually adopt them and become them.
yes,
But
even if they didn't feel it.
Because of your nature, alhamdulillah, your spirit, you actually rebelled and went the other way. Okay,
Yeah.
you told me I'm probably going to struggle. I'm going to be really weak and really upset. Well, you know what? Let me show you, kind of thing. So
yeah.
labels
Well, your
empower you. So
your
it's like,
thoughts
thanks
control
for the
your
labels.
feelings.
Yeah.
And I'm you know, I'm someone who did, so I've got, you know, a little bit of experience in hypnotherapy. So I do understand the power of the mind over the body, and I do believe I've experienced it during 2 of my labors, and it was amazing. So I do understand, and I do understand, and I'm a really big believer in your mind over matter. You know, your mind is more important, and it will control your physical. So, but it is, I believe it's a very easy option, especially if you are in that victim mentality. It's very, very easy to take those labels that everyone is assigning you and to fulfill them. It's like fulfilling their prophecy of you. And it's easy because when you fulfill what society puts on you, then you get more of the sympathy and you get more of the, oh, okay, this is what was meant to happen. So after this breakdown, you might have a few more and then you'll feel a bit stronger, or this may just be a lifelong thing. And I feel like it's a never-ending cycle, and it's self-abuse, you know, and the person who's going to feel it the most is yourself. So why would you want to put yourself through that kind of hardship? You know,
You're punishing yourself.
You're punishing yourself, and it's like no one's gonna be there when you're all alone in a darkened room, feeling so empty and dark. Like no one's gonna be there to be like, oh, they're there. It's just you and yourself, and it's such an ugly place to be. So I feel like even though people mean well by kind of giving the heads up of what you might go through, I feel like we owe it to ourselves to break those stereotypes and kind of follow what we think is going to be the best for our mental health and the mental health of those dependent on us, which is our children, you know, because I'm sure the way I reacted, it would have been picked up by my son. And my son has had his ups and downs, you know, his mental health.
Yeah. They take from your energy. They take from your energy.
Definitely
so imagine
do.
if you're a mess, it detracts from his struggle and his journey, because now he's probably he would be in his own pain. He'd be like, how do I now accommodate for mum's pain? And he wouldn't live his authentic pain.
That's right. And he'd feed off any negativity that I'm going to be displaying. And I know my son sees me as a type of protector. So if your protector is feeling weak and vulnerable, then what kind of protection are you drawing from them?
Feel safe. Yeah,
it doesn't feel safe, and that's like the worst. Oh my gosh, that's the worst thing, to be hooked up to machines and not feel safe, or to have all of these,
children are meant to feel
strangers in your
safe,
face.
and safety and connection is the number one thing, right? Attachment, safety, and connection.
Their sanctuary. You're meant to be their sanctuary, and you're meant to be this like open door of communication, of like, you can tell me anything. And I've always, my mantra, like I've been telling my kids forever, there is nothing you can do in this world that will upset me, where I will not help you and work it out. I may get angry in the moment, you know, if it was something big, but I will always be on your side and help you out. And I feel like that needs to be repeated a lot to kids.
Such an important,
because you want them. And then like I remember even my son saying, even if I killed someone, I'm like, even if you killed someone, we will work it out. You know, like take it to the end of the spectrum.
Exactly.
This is me as a mother. I got your back till the end. It's, you know, as they say, ride or die. And
yeah. If you know, human beings are worthy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness with the worst of crimes, the worst of sins, then who are we not to forgive, subhanAllah? And who are we 100%. To reject them because of their faults or mistakes, you know? So yeah, I really like the message that you guys are giving, mashallah, which is, I think, important in our times now, where probably all of you meet women here and there where there is this massive sense of disempowerment. There's this hopelessness, there's this helplessness that is so common. And we are in times, ever-changing times, ever critical times than ever in history, where the next generation really need solid adults in their lives, and solid adults leading the way and living by example. So I think, you know, for any mothers or even fathers, parents, adults listening, to really think about checking in with yourself and checking in to discover your own power, your own potential, your own hero that exists within you, which we all have, subhanAllah, through Allah's mercy and through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's inspiration. We have great resilience and great courage and great potential and ability within us to really rise above the tests that we have in life. So knowing that in life, we're all going to be tested in some way, tested with hardship. We also learn that you can be tested with ease. What would you advise someone, in just a couple of sentences, in how to prepare themselves for the eventual test? Because, you know, we might be cruising along now, someone might be tuning, going, alhamdulillah, feeling really grateful that they're not in a difficult testing situation. But we also learn and know that we shouldn't ever feel safe from the tests of Allah. But how can we prepare ourselves spiritually for potential future tests in life? Heba?
I think for me, it's about knowing and being content with everything that happens, whether it's good or bad. Like, everything that's meant to happen is going to happen. This is the qadr of Allah. And you know that cliche almost of, you know, la yukallifu Allahu nafsan illa wusaha. Like, the tests that are going to be put in your path are designed for you, because Allah knows that you have the capability to overcome it. And it's a choice. You can choose to overcome it or not. You can choose to be a victim, or you can choose to rise above. And also knowing that whatever is going to come your way is going to come your way, and whatever is going to pass you by is going to pass you by, right? So it's just, you know, acceptance and being conscious, and just, you know, like everything, gratitude, just being grateful for everything. And that's how we get to that level of nasr mutma'inna, where we're content with everything that comes our way, and knowing that this world is just a transitional period, that, you know, the ultimate world is in Jannah, and this is just our means to show our worthiness, right? And we all have that within ourselves. Like, we all have that. Allah has given us that power within ourselves. So yeah, just own it, I guess, and you know, keep thinking positive, and just be content with all the good, and, you know, in everything bad there is good as well, right?
Yeah,
silver linings.
Absolutely. Yeah. Aisha?
Yeah. The things that I feel like I kind of keep in my mind when I'm going through a trial, and knowing that life is full of trials. That's something I've taught my kids, and I've had to kind of, you know, teach my son as he was going through his treatment, was like, this is just one of your trials. And when you get through this, it means you're going to come out stronger, inshallah. And I'm actually very excited to see you grow, because I'm sure Allah has big things planned for you, to give you this trial at this age, at this time. So my thing that I tell myself and I teach my kids is, it's a couple. So one of them would be, when something surprises you in life, is control what you can control. So control the aspects that you actually physically, mentally, everything can control. And the ones you can't control, that are not within your reach because it's from other people, it's purely from Allah's decree, leave them, literally wholeheartedly leave them to Allah. Like aql wa tawakkul. That's when you put your full
submit your will.
Yeah, full submission. And I don't mean it as in like, this is, you know, aql wa tawakkul is something you hear always, you know, rely on Allah. Sometimes we can say it very airy fairy and be like, oh yeah, I rely on Allah. But if you were to really, really sit down and you were to take one aspect that gives you anxiety, and then you have to classify it, is it something I can change or something I can't change. If something you can change, you have to work to change it. It's in your power. Allah's given you that power to change it. If it's something you can't change, like health or finances, or your situation in life that is not from you, not because of your actions. If you were to sit down and literally just even visualize where you're giving this burden away to Allah and you're trusting Him to take care of this issue, and you're making dua and you're asking for what you want to ask for the impossible. When you put your trust in Allah wholeheartedly, like sincerely, it's such a weight off your shoulders, and it's such a beautiful feeling, that connection you have with Allah when you like fully trust Him. So you think about who you trust in your life, that, you know, if you were just to fall back and that catch you at that moment, think of something that transcends that. And that's how Allah's got your back. And I feel like that's helped me a lot. And I feel like that will continuously help me with whatever Allah has planned for me, because I do sincerely trust His will. Even though it may not look hopeful for me in the near future, I always see things play out to be like, okay, this was actually meant to happen this way and in its own timing, you know. And another thing would be, you know, Allah, we hear this a lot and we read it a lot on social media, is Allah gives you what you can handle. And again, if you actually were to sit down and think about that, so if you think, if the whole world's telling you, wow, that's such a big trial, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened to you, it's almost like a compliment coming from your Creator saying, I've given you this hardship because I know you can rise above and I know you can handle it. So it's almost like a compliment that Allah is reminding you of how strong you are. So if no one, if no one believes in you, exactly, if no one believes in you, and you sometimes aren't believing in yourself, your own Creator is telling you, I created you to handle this. So, you know, if you're going to build a strong foundation for a skyscraper and you're only willing to put a little house on top of it, but Allah saying, no, you are capable of handling more. And it's that window. So when you're going through a hardship, there's like a window of opportunity for hasanat and barakah. And when you're in the thick of the trial, it's good to remember that window is open to get hasanat for your patience, extra dua, for a lot of things that's going to be on the lifeline where you can sweep under the rug or really excel in. And know that this hardship is going to pass, as everything does. So when the hardship does pass or it gets easier and that window closes, you don't have that opportunity to collect those gold stars, as I explained to my kids. I'm like, it's like Mario, where you're going around collecting the gold stars. And I was told my son when he was, you know, in his intensive treatment, I'm like, you have gold stars everywhere. Collect them now, because once you're done with this level, those gold stars are going to be back to normal stuff. Okay, so collect, like, and that's how I kind of I simplify a lot of things for my children. And I'm a very visual person, so I paint a lot of things for them in their mind. We do a lot of visualizations. But that's my outlook on things, is there's a lot of opportunity to gain hasanat in this trying moment. You know, just like now, inshallah, if today is the night of power, this is our window of opportunity to do more and get more reward. So just like when you're in a trial, that opportunity is you know, it's many. So what your salat, someone's salat in their home when they've got nothing going on is good. But when you're in the hospital in admission with your son and you're unsure and you're stressed and you're sitting there on the hospital towel, praying next to your son's bed, it's something different with Allah, you know. And once the opportunity goes, it goes, and you're on to the next thing.
You're discovering, you have the ability to discover the depths of Iman through your calamities. Like a lot of people express too, like the closest they ever felt to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was actually in the hardest times of their lives. When you ask me, when did you experience like, a high continued state? It was like just during the whole span of a big trial I went through, I felt so connected to Allah. Why? Because it's through desperation that we truly drop to our knees, and by force, almost like we're like, I have nowhere to turn, I submit. Submit. And it's a beautiful thing, subhanAllah, and I guess one of the important points to take away is it's futile to resist what is, to resist the test. Waste of energy, a waste of
unproductive.
To just resist what is. And I remember reading that, when a situation comes your way, you can either do something to change it, You can accept it, or you can step away from it and say, no, I don't want that in my life. To do nothing is madness.
Yeah.
And that's what people do. They sit frozen sometimes. We can fall
I
into
think
that,
it's,
just
I feel like
sitting
it's fight or
paralyzed.
flight. Yeah.
Yeah,
Some
you're just
people are fight or
paralyzed.
flight.
I
Yeah.
don't know what to do. I don't know what to
Fight
do.
or
And
flight
that's
or
the worst.
freeze. The freeze
Yeah,
one, the one
yeah.
that do nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
they
the
expect
three
other
F- the
people
three
to step
Fs.
in and do it. Yeah, because they say I feel like a lot of people that freeze maybe are
Yeah,
not
you're like,
are
someone
not
quick
used to
change
somebody
the
do it.
situation.
Yeah,
Yeah, someone
They're
quick change this.
codependent. They're codependent.
yeah.
as well. Mm.
yeah. And you know what? Being codependent, I feel like, and I hope no one gets offended with this, but being codependent to that degree, I feel like is a little bit selfish, because you're putting that responsibility on another human being that has their own problems. And yes, you know, we're codependent in different aspects, but not to the point of all your life decisions and those big life changes that affect you directly, you know. And I think it is something selfish to put on someone, even if it's a spouse or a parent or, you know, a friend, or, you know, to be dependent on them for your emotions and your directions in life is selfish. You know, and it's time to kind of step up, and it's okay to fail. You know, it's okay to make mistakes, because through our mistakes is how we get better. No one is going to go through life faultless.
Yeah, subhanallah. Heba, what would you advise someone? You know, we're in the, you know, last few nights of Ramadan. What would you advise someone in these nights if they're going through really difficult test or challenge? How can they, you know, use their time wisely? What are some advices that you would give?
Well, I guess in my understanding of all this is to look inwards. I feel like a lot of people going through hardships try to get external validation or external support, or you know, they're looking outwards for it to be rectified. But the answer is inside you. You know, like the answer is in your mind, the answer is in your soul, and the answer is with Allah, who is connected to your soul. So look inwards and really try and understand, you know, whatever's happening to you, whatever hardship is happening to you. It could be trying to understand why, or it could be trying to understand how this is helping you to grow, because Allah gives us all these hardships to grow. Like it's the law of polarity, right? With every up there is a down, with every right there is a left, with every happiness there is sadness. How can you really truly experience happiness if you've never experienced sadness? So kind of look at it in that way, like what is this teaching me? How am I going to grow from this? Like I'm sharing a lot of what Aisha said, what is talking about her experiences. Like everything she's saying to me is really like hitting my heart. And it was interesting about what you said before, Calisha, about a lot of people, they turn to Allah when they're in their most calamity sort of thing. You know, it's always been the opposite for me. I actually find it really hard to connect spiritually when I have something really hard happening to me. For me, connecting spiritually is always when I'm not facing hardship.
Wow.
I don't know why. It's really weird.
The other way around.
It's the other way around. It's like when my life is easy, I can connect spiritually so much better. So I would think that because I'm looking inwards, like I look inward. So I say with people who have the tendency to connect with Allah in hardship, look inwards in your hardship, right? And people who tend to connect more spiritually with Allah in ease, look inwards. Like the answer is inside you. And if you do need to, you know, we are communal beings as well. So if you do need external support, great, but not in a codependent way. Like maybe with a psychologist or a therapist or a counselor or a life coach or something. Yep. That way, where it's like you're actually growing and changing for the better, not having a whinge, not just complaining for the sake of complaining. There should be a purpose for why, you know, to be honest, actually, when you complain and talk about your past all the time, you're actually keeping yourself in fight, flight, freeze mode, because your hyper vigilant state, you keep bringing it, you're living in your prefrontal, your prefrontal cortex. So it's like you said before, step aside, accept, or grow and move on, right? So that's kind of my last message is look inward, figure it out. What's the message? What's the purpose? Why is this happening? Why is Allah challenging me with this? There's always a positive reason. It's not so that I can suffer. And the thing is, suffering is human. We must suffer. We must suffer to grow, right? To become better versions of ourselves, to get more in touch with our spiritual self. So if it's a way for you to turn back to Allah, then turn back to Allah. or if it's a way to figure yourself out and deal with whatever's inside you, maybe your darkness, or trying to unpack your traumas, then do that. Like, you owe it to yourself, right? You owe it to yourself. And remember that, you know, Allah comes first, and then second is self. Self-preservation is more important than husband, children, parents, blah, right? Self. You can't be
such a common
Muslim.
misconception.
Yes, self-preservation is complete. If you know,
especially
like
for women.
Exactly. So self-preservation for sure. Oh, I think Calisha dropped out. You're on mute, Calisha.
Sorry, guys. But yes, self-preservation is such a common misconception, where people think, especially women, mothers, that everyone else comes first, I come last if there's a bit of time or energy left. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, he says, "Qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara." Save yourself first, and then your families. You can't save anybody if you're not saving yourself. You can't build an ark, put everyone on it, and you're not even on the ark. You know what I mean? Like, you've got to look after yourself first.
The whole analogy of if a plane's going down and the oxygen mask test, who do you put the oxygen mask on first? And it may sound selfish, but you put it on yourself first, because if you crumble, being the pillar of a household, if you crumble, then the whole building's coming down. And really, it's not worth it.
Yeah, definitely. SubhanAllah. Yeah, so do you guys have any final points before I check in with any questions that have come through?
I would just
I
just wanted to add that on seeing that there's only a few more days left in Ramadan, this is what I'm personally doing, and what I found helps you connect to Allah, because I feel like Ramadan is kind of like a reset to connect with Allah to like the maximum, you know, is to literally sit there and have a conversation with Allah. Like, I know it's good we sit down, we open up our dua books, and we say the ones that are from the Sunnah, and you know, some from Quran and some from our favorite shuyukh and lecturers and scholars. But I feel like that the art of sitting down and having a conversation with Allah in your native tongue is lost. It's something I teach my children, to sit there and literally have a conversation. And they're like, oh, but we don't know Arabic. And I'm like, no, you literally sit down and speak to Allah. Like, He created you. So if you're speaking gibberish that I don't understand, He will understand you. And even when they were young, I used to teach them to gibber to Allah and just tell Him, you know, the toys that they wanted, or if I was being mean or anything like that. So even us as adults, to sit down and have that conversation with Allah, especially when you're going through hardship, and just pour it out to Him. Like on your prayer mat, pour it out. If you want to cry, cry on there. If you want to complain and you know, whine and you know, feel sorry for yourself and all of that, do it there in front of Allah. Be the most vulnerable you can be, and ask Allah for His guidance, and ask Him to lead you onto Sirat al-Mustaqim, and to lead you to whatever is going to give you success in this life and the next. And I don't know if that's something, I don't hear about it much, where it's advised, where you sit down and actually have an actual raw conversation with Allah. I feel like it's so precious, and in Ramadan it will just connect you. It's like catching up with an old friend, sitting down and connecting with Allah in that way. And then it's just, I don't know, it's something indescribable. I absolutely love doing it. And I feel like that kind of helps in all other aspects of your deen, you know, with your prayer, with your dua, with your dhikr, your connection with your kids, and the way you are as a mother and daughter and wife and whatnot. Yeah, so that's my one little thing.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, mashallah, jazakallah khair. And I think, that communication to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, turning to Him and pouring your heart out, is so important. And also on the other side of it, some people feel like, but what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala want from me? Like, I'm still confused. I don't understand what is His message to me? I would want to remind myself, all of us, to always just turn back to the Quran and just read what He has to say to us, read the messages in there. I know that some people, they struggle. They're like, I'll read so many verses, I don't know what they mean, but keep reading and you will find verses where you're like, aha, that's one that I can
that
see.
epiphany.
You have these moments where this applies to me. And I remember every Ramadan I used to just like circle the verses that would impact me, and then the next Ramadan I'd come back and then I'd be like, not feeling that verse this year, this other verse is what's hitting me. And this is why the Quran is so beautiful and unique like that. It has the exact medicine that you need when you need it, in the correct dosage and in the timing that is meant to be. But we have to search for that as well. We have to make that effort to show up for the Quran. And again, of course, the benefits of reciting, the blessing of reciting in Arabic, super important, but don't underestimate studying the meaning if Arabic isn't your first language, to just look at the translation of the Quran and the commentary as well about the message that it's able to give you in the navigation of your life. We can draw so much inspiration from the lives of the prophets who were just tested the most. They were tested the most. So if they were the best human beings and they were tested the most, who are we to be free from tests? You know, so meet life with like tests are going to come, and I've just got to be well grounded and well anchored and flow through them. Let them come. It's going to burn sometimes, it's going to sting, it's going to be like holding onto a hot coal, right? Holding onto your Iman during those tests, but eventually it will pass. So alhamdulillah, I think you guys, I'm so blown away by the advices and the insights and the wisdom, the tools that you guys shared tonight. I hope, inshallah, our audience and our sisters greatly benefited from it. And please, everyone who's tuning in, share this with your networks. Allow others to benefit from our conversation. You know, this is something that, if we could, you know, potentially, this is like a conversation that you're bringing into your lounge rooms, into your social circles. This is three sisters, you know, just having a deep chat about a really important topic that impacts all of us, you know, in the community. So I really want to thank you guys, Heba and Aisha, for your time. We have gone a little bit over time, you know, technically we wanted to do an hour, but I think it just needed that extra flow, alhamdulillah. So thank you so much, dear sisters. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of your worship in these final days of Ramadan. And we wish you all the best of health, the best of faith and protection and blessings and Allah's mercy around your family and your homes. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for every second that you spent here dedicating your time, your energy, your heart, your spirit to the betterment of our precious Muslim community. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Calisha.
No worries, guys. So everyone who's tuning in, remember to check out the last few days of the National Zakat Foundation programs that we've got running online. There's so much to benefit from on the National Zakat Foundation Facebook page at the moment. Alhamdulillah, I think they're also streaming onto YouTube. So you guys say hi to everyone on YouTube. I haven't even checked that out. But alhamdulillah, doing amazing things in the community. Everybody, don't forget to pay your zakat. And yes, of course, pay it to National Zakat Foundation. As well as any sadaqah, it's local contributions to serve our local community, and something that we really have to realize the importance of, inshallah. So jazakallah khair to everyone for tuning in, and we'll finish off. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.